Right, let's return to Python where we left off, the handler. Just looking at it, we've got a couple of things to change, or at least one thing to change. That is the address that we are calling. It's no longer index 3, it is getPerson. But getPerson now requires a set of parameters on it. So let's see what happens if I just try to run it with absolutely passing no parameters. So if I run my module, there we go. It's all working. Error, the parameter is missing. Let me shut this shell down to restart it so we don't get confused with previous stuff. There we go. Error, the parameter is missing. So I've got to provide these parameters, and I've got to provide them in a get. There's two different methods. There's a get and there's a post method, and we're going to look at the get method in this one, which is actually just tacking on a question mark and whatever parameters are there. Now you could do this manually. You could just type in there last name equals Smith. You could do that. So if I saved it and run it, and we get the values back that we expect, but that's not going to really work if I need to keep changing these values, if I want to keep using the same file for different values. So what I really need is to get the information from the user, so that is just a straightforward raw input. So if I set up a variable last name equals raw underscore input, enter the person's last name, let's make a space for it. So having done that, I am now going to run my Python, and it's going to ask me for a last name. I'm not going to run it at the moment. I think you know what's going to happen from that one. You've had plenty of practice with this. Before I actually try to type things on here, I can't just put question mark and last name, because on here they're actually key value pairs. Last name is a key and the value is whatever you type in here. I could put the last name in and just tack on what the value is that you get, but I'm going to approach it in this way. I'm going to approach it so that we build the key value pairs. Now to do that, well, I've got to come back to this library and use another one of the library's functions. And the library function that I'm going to need is called URL encode. So I'm going to write that first. So when I've got my information back, what I'm going to do is have a variable called data and URL lib. Better if I spelt it correctly. .url encode. And what this does is makes key value pairs, and it's a function. So key value pairs in Python is just called a dictionary really, and there's a specific way of specifying that. That's between the two curly braces with the colon separator. In the first part is going to be the key, and the key that I'm going to use is last name. So that's going to put the key on here, last name, and in the value part what I'm going to use is this variable here. So I'm even going to copy it because I'm too lazy to type it out, and I'm going to paste it there. Now that is giving me my key value pairs, and they're both stored in the variable called data. So really what I want to do is tack data onto the end of my address there. So how am I going to do that? the first thing I need to do is put the question mark in for the get statement, and after that I'm going to use a placeholder, a string placeholder, and to do that in Python you need the % symbol and the S for a string. So whatever is outside of the two speech marks indicated by the placeholder is going to be replaced in there. So that's saying the placeholder is, and the value that we need is data. So if I copy and paste that and place it in there, that is the job done. Let's just widen this so we can see things. So what's going to happen is that data is going to contain my last name and whatever the variable is. That is going to be a placeholder. So wherever it finds a placeholder here, it's going to replace it with data. So that's how I build my string up for the GET request. There is nothing really special about this. This is just normal Python coding and string formatting. However, this is a particular library call that you need to make. One other thing that you might want to do is, because we're getting some input here, you might want to put that in a sort of try except block. So try to read the last name from the keyboard, and if it all fails for some unknown reason, then all I'm going to do is say last name is empty. Let's just space that out a little bit. Now that should be all the Python code I need to do what I did with the index.php file and call the data. So we're actually going to try that out. We're going to run this and see what happens. So if I run the model, enter the person's last name, I type Smith and press enter, I get 2 Smiths. Excellent. Run it again. Let's do what we did before with Negus. Yeah, we've got that coming back. Lovely. Run it again, and we'll try it with blogs just to make sure we get everything that we've got in the database. Perfect. And obviously something that doesn't exist. So let's try Jones. Error, no results returned. And what happens if I just don't bother typing anything at all, just leave it blank? The value is missing, so it's picked up the fact that it is blank. So that's working nicely. Perhaps it would be a little bit better if we printed out more meaningful information. At the moment we've got Smith and Smith. I don't know which Smith is which. So let's just edit the code a little bit so that I'm printing out 1 or 2 more things. So let's do the first name. So if I copy and paste that there, so I just need to change that for first name. And what I'm going to do is put a comma at the end so that it separates the first and last name with a single space mark. So this is more meaningful data being printed out. As I said, I'm not really interested in the processing of the information, only the getting and putting of the information. I'm going to leave it up to you how you play around with that data once you've got it. So let's just run it through one more time. Run the module and type in Smith, and this time we should see, there we go, Jane Smith and Joe Smith. Obviously we could get their age out as well, or the ID. It's not going to be too much of a difficult stretch for that one. So that's it. We've actually managed to send information to the database for the database to go and find the information we've looked for, whether it's everything or whether it's just an individual item, and return that back to the program. So that's pretty good. The only problem that we've got at the moment is that we are using the GET request. Okay, so everything is all on the URL, which, if you remember back to the early videos, in certain cases, and we are going to look at passing information that would need to be done via post, but if we don't want to see these appearing anywhere, then we need to do the post method. So that's going to be my next challenge, is to show you how to do the same thing with post. To do that, we're going to have to change the PHP again. I'm going to let you think about how that might happen before we do it, and I'm going to show you how to change the post method in the index file. You should know how to do that. However, there's going to be a little bit of a change on this so that we can actually tell Python that we're sending a post request. Now, this is going to be fairly important, particularly if you are, like I said, sending information to the database, or maybe if you're using a device and you're doing it over the air through the internet. Maybe you want to send all of your information in the body of the document rather than in the URL. So we'll have a look at that in the next set of videos.